Hello fellow gamers, Peter here from the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about a very exciting game. It is The Thing, the board game. Now it just so happens that The Thing is one of my favourite films of all time. I'd put it in the top 3. I remember seeing it in the cinema in 1982. I was 16 years old. It blew my tiny mind. Unbelievable film. This is before computer special effects. It was all practically done and it was just mind-blowing. I remember looking at it and thinking, how did they do that? So I'm very excited to see that Ares and Pendragon Games have come up with this board game version of one of my favourite films, and I'm going to spoil it right now. It's fantastic. I played it with 4 players. We had a hoot. It was a great time. And we had a really good laugh and enjoyed it. And it really immerses you in the film. But wait, I'm going to tell you more about this game, roughly how it plays, our experience with it, and also a few criticisms. It's not absolutely perfect, but to me, it's the closest we've come to the perfect The Thing board game. So let's get started. Before I do so, however, let me tell you that Ares gave me a copy of this game for free. I also have here the miniatures. I'm not using the standees that come in the set. I've got the extra miniatures as well, which I've roughly painted up. There's also a few extra things here, like acrylic tokens that came with the Kickstarter pledge. Now, also, I have a big neoprene mat, but I'm using the board from the actual core game instead of the mat. Now, I have a long association with Ares games. I know them well. War of the Ring is my favourite game of all time. And I've also done some graphic design work for them in the past. So they send me freebies quite regularly, but I'm very happy to talk about them because they're great games and I enjoy playing them. So enough of that, let's get started and let me tell you all about The Thing. So here we have the setup for 4 players. Now The Thing plays up to 8 players, and also there's a solo mode. Now the solo to 3-player version is different from the normal rules. So you will be having a different play experience if you do that. So it's certainly the more players the better, because there's a lot of sneakiness going on in this game. Of course, one of the players starts as the Thing, and they will be infecting other players during the game, and you won't know who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. So the more players the better. Each player has a little play sheet here. You've each got a special ability as well, and if you turn into the Thing and expose yourself, you'll flip over this card and you'll see the actions you can take as the Thing. You also start with some Contagion tokens of your colour. One of them is the Thing, 2 of them are human ones, and a couple of roll cards. So depending on whether you're the Thing or a human, you'll slide this underneath your character sheet so you can identify yourself as one of the 2. Everyone also starts with a couple of action cards. On the board, we have a number of fuel tokens all over the board. There's an underground storage area. They're also in the boiler room and the generator room. We've got food tokens in the pantry. And we've also got damage tokens. The radio room starts damaged, as does the shed area, which is also the snowcat, and the base helicopter. At the end of the first turn, we'll be placing dogs on the board. They will start moving around the base. And also the rescue helicopter is also on its way, and hopefully will come along and rescue some of our beleaguered base inhabitants. The alien has strength counters, but if you have the miniatures set, you can use these instead. I've just given them a quick paint job, and I'll do a more detailed job on them later. Over on the left here, we've got a deck of item cards, weapon cards. These 2 are arranged depending on how many players you have in the game. Also some action cards and location cards. This is the laboratory bag. At the start of the game, for each player, you put 2 blood bag tokens and 3 failure lab tokens into this bag. At the start of the game, you'll take these dog infection tokens. One of them is the alien. You'll take as many as there are players in the game, and you'll hand them out secretly to each player, and this indicates which player is the alien. And then you put all of these tokens, all 9 of them, in this infection bag, appropriately coloured lurid green. Each player has a suspicion disc, and these go on the yellow space of the suspicion track. There's also a weather table that changes depending on the number of players. The one printed on the board is for 4 to 5 players, or you can use one of these cards for other numbers of players. The first player marker, which is a counter in the game, and for the extra is this huge bottle of B&J, in quotation marks, that goes on a random location at the start of the game, and you're ready to start. Now, before I get started on how to play the game, a word of warning. I found this rulebook very difficult to understand, and I think it could have been better written and laid out. Some of the things aren't described very well, some of the locations aren't made very clear. It was quite confusing. So, if you'll allow me to make a plug, I'm going to recommend my Esoteric Order of Gamers rules summary and reference. You can download this from my website at orderofgamers.com. And I've gone to lots and lots of trouble to make this much clearer than the rulebook. So have a look through the rulebook and definitely look at the examples in that. But after that, give this a read and keep it by you while you're playing the game. And in fact, while you're playing the game, you'll find there's a player reference sheet as well, which you can keep by you to refer to during the game. It's also got all the locations and the things you can do on the back of the sheet. So go check that out. If you enjoy it, if you find it useful, please consider leaving a small donation to show your appreciation. Or if you really like the Esoteric Order of Gamers work, you can go to my Patreon page. I'll link to it in the show notes below, and perhaps become a regular supporter of the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Right, now back to the game. One of the things I love about The Thing, the board game, is that instead of coming up with a rule system and just bolting the theme on top of it, what they've done is obviously studied the film and basically made a rule for everything that happens in it. It's very, very much based on the film, and I really love that level of immersion. So I'm going to walk you through very quickly the turn phases so you get an idea of what to do. I'm not going to go into huge detail, but I'll give you a good overview. The first thing you do is the leader, who at the start of the game is the player who last watched The Thing, rolls the weather die and then places it on its matching column. This tells you what the weather is like, because in the next phase you're going to be using fuel and advancing the rescue helicopter these number of spaces. Now, you only advance the rescue helicopter if the SOS has already been sent from the radio room. So for the moment, we'll just use fuel. And we go over here to the boiler room and use one fuel, and the generator and use one fuel, as you can see on the table. Now, during the game, you're going to have to do a lot of upkeep, and if you run out of things like fuel, you're going to be in trouble. So if the boiler room runs out of fuel, things are going to get cold very fast. You'll have to put this freezing template over the top and start moving the freezing token along here until eventually it gets to this space and everybody dies. In the generator room, if it gets damaged, you have to place this token here, and that means the whole base is in darkness. And when everyone is choosing their actions, they'll have to use a random card instead of choosing one. Bad things don't happen as soon as you run out of fuel, but if you don't have enough fuel, the difference will be placed in damage tokens, and when it gets to the end, those bad things start happening. The next phase, the third phase, is an alien actions phase, which only comes into play if the alien has exposed themselves. So we'll get into that a little bit later. The next phase is the meat of the game, the action phase. Everyone draws action cards until they have 3 in hand. The leader of the game, who has this reference sheet, draws an extra card and puts it on the leader stack. So, starting with the player to the left of the leader, you take your piece and you move it to the location that you want to go to, and then you give the leader one of your cards, face down, who puts it on the stack. Next, we have encounters. If you happen to be in a room where there are 2 or more characters, or a dog, you might have to check for contagions, because one of those characters, or the dog, might be the thing. Now, as I mentioned before, each player has 3 contagion tokens, 2 human and 1 the thing. Now, if you're doing a contagion check and you are the thing, you can either choose to put down 2 human tokens or 1 human token and 1 alien token. If you're a human player, you have to put down 2 human tokens. So, for example, this guy's the alien and he puts these 2 down. This guy is a human, puts these 2 down. These are face down. The other player has to look at one of these tokens. So this player might look at this token and go, oh, he's human, he's fine. Or he might look at this one and find out that he's the alien, in which case the orange player is going to be infected. So in other words, the green player can choose to continue to pretend to be a human, or he can try and infect the other player. Now, at the end of a contagion check, everyone involved shuffles their 2 roll cards and then puts one underneath their character card. And this is to hide the fact that they may have changed their status. So, if you're not infected and you're a human already, you might just take up the card, shuffle them, and put your human one back in. But if you're infected, of course, you'll be putting the thing one back underneath your character card. If you're a lone character who encounters a dog, because the dogs start wandering around the base later on, you'll just draw from the contagion bag, and you may draw one of the alien counters if you're unlucky and thus become infected. After any encounters, the leader takes the leader's stack, and the number of cards here will be equal to the number of players plus 1. He gives this a shuffle, and then he draws 1 card, and he has to assign this to one of the players on the board. So, for example, he's drawn a sabotage here. Now, that either means that the sabotage came out of the action deck as these 1 random card, or one of the players in the game put a sabotage card into the leader deck. So, he still has to assign this to somebody. So, for example, he might have to assign it to this character here, who then has to fulfill the sabotage action for the kitchen. You might draw a repair card, which means that somebody in a place which is damaged can remove a damage token. Or you might be able to assign a use card to someone. For example, this guy who's in the armory, who can now draw one of the weapon cards. After that, everybody regroups in the leisure room, and this is where one of the iconic scenes from the film is recreated. You get to make accusations at other players, accusing them of being the alien. And everyone gets to vote at the same time and point to the player who they think is the alien. Now, as you're having encounters and doing things, your suspicion marker will be increasing up the suspicion track. If you're in the green, you can't be accused during this phase. If somebody votes for you during this phase, your suspicion marker will go up the track. Then you might be able to do some tests to see if other people are the alien. If you've got a bloodbad token, you can do a test on the player with the highest level of suspicion. If you've got a flamethrower and a wire, you can do a test on any player. In both cases, the player who is tested has to show everybody their roll card. So this is a great way of exposing the alien. Finally, everyone has to eat. And there are some lovely little spam containers here in the pantry. Now, if you've used the kitchen action, you can move some of these to the kitchen and they will be discarded. If you haven't done that, you're going to have to discard four food tokens from the pantry. Finally, there are some shenanigans with the dogs. They'll be moving around the board to various locations and possibly infecting other players. Now, you're probably thinking, well, there's a lot going on in a turn there. And there is. And in fact, there's a lot more added to that because each one of the locations has its use, repair and sabotage action. There's all other things you can do as well. You can set locations on fire. You can, of course, have weapons and items that you can use to do various things. If you're the alien and has exposed itself as the alien, then you can assign a certain amount of strength to various locations in the board. And then if you encounter characters there, you have to compare strengths. And if you win, you have a chance to assimilate the character. Lots and lots of things going on. As I said, all derived from the film. So you really feel like you're recreating the film. It's quite a lot to take in, but once you start playing and you've played one turn, it really does start to flow really nicely because once you get the hang of the contagion check and things like that, the feeling of the film and the immersion just kind of takes over and you really, really get into the whole thing. Let me tell you about an experience with this game. We were playing with 4 players. Player 1 was the alien, no one knew of course, and they quickly infected player 2. Now I suspected player 2 for quite a long time during the game. I didn't suspect player 1, and the reason is that player 1 was expressing the fact that he was finding difficulty learning the rules a little bit. And he said in the past that he finds it a bit difficult to learn complicated games. So he sort of played on that very much. So I didn't suspect him of being the alien at all. It was very, very sneaky indeed. Now, of course, he'd already infected player 2. So I was suspecting player 2 more and more for various reasons. And then when player 1 realised that all the heat was going on player 2, he exposed himself as the alien and all the attention went over onto player 1 and player 2 was forgotten about. So while we were all trying to stop player 1, player 2 just went off and sneakily infected player 3 and myself, player 4. And everyone was an alien at the end of the game. It was absolutely hilarious and just showed that the mechanics of this game blended beautifully with some sneaky play, and that player 1 really did some sneaky stuff by playing on his past history to assuage all my suspicions towards him. Everybody loved the game, really, really enjoyed it, and I can see things panning out completely differently depending on the types of players you have. The luck of whether you get picked for a test and you get exposed early, or you choose to expose yourself as the alien early. There's so much to explore here, and there's also an expansion, the Norwegian Outpost expansion, which of course is based on the, I think it's 2012 prequel to the John Carpenter film. And that's got also the alien spacecraft and some different rules in it as well. Now, of course, I mentioned before that 1 to 3 players solo and 2 and 3 players is a completely different system. Well, not completely different, but they changed the rules quite a bit. I haven't tried that yet, but it would be a very much a different experience and with not as much negotiation sneakiness going on. It would be more of a cooperative kind of experience against the AI alien. So if you play that version, you're really going to be missing out on some of the bluffing and the tension that happens with more players. So as you probably already guessed, I absolutely love The Thing, the board game. It captures the feel of the film really well. I only have 2 small criticisms. One is the rule book, which, as I said, is very confusing. And 2 is the graphic design choices of the game. I'm not too sold on the bright colours that are used. To me, The Thing is kind of, gritty and realistic, and the bright colours don't seem to quite work for me. And because they've used a colour coding system on the board, it makes the board look very technicolor, all these colours, very bright, which doesn't fit, for me, the theme. For example, there are whole areas on the board which are just coloured red, which are used as just spaces for discard cards and damage tokens and things like that. The other ones are colour-coded dependent on their use during the game, but I think this information is not absolutely crucial once you get used to the game. So it seems like they made a big visual sacrifice for giving you that information by making everything so brightly coloured. Also, I find the icons very kind of generic looking. They don't have much in the way of personality to fit with the thing. They could really go with any other game. Though, of course, the information design is quite clear. You do have icons on every location to tell you what you can do there. Again, you can use a reference sheet, but once you get to know the game, those icons should remind you what you can do in each of the locations. So how do you win? Well, there are multiple ways of winning, but usually they involve escaping the base. Of course, if everyone becomes an alien, it's all over and the alien players win, or you all lose. I don't know, one or the other. But you've got a rescue helicopter, which might come if you've sent the SOS. There's a base helicopter if you've fixed the damage on it. And there's a snowcat, which is confusingly also named the shed. I don't know why they've done that. But the snowcat, if you repair that, you can escape the base with that. However, when you escape the base, everyone who escapes has to show their roll cards. And if one is the alien, they're going to win because they've escaped the base and they're going to infect the rest of the planet. So if you escape and everyone's a human, the alien loses. I'm really looking forward to playing The Thing more, and every time I get about 4 players together, I'm going to be bringing this one out because we had a really, really fun time. Don't be daunted by the rules load to start with. It does flow once you get the hang of it. Again, my rules summary I think you'll find very, very useful if you want to play. And also, it's great to get the miniatures expansion sets too, because the standees are all very well, but it's great to have these nice little quality miniatures as well. I hope you've enjoyed this look at The Thing, the board game by Ares Games and Pendragon Games. Great to see this fantastic film in such a carefully reproduced board game form. This is the kind of game that I absolutely love, really, really thematic and immerses you in the world of the film or the theme or whatever it is. I think it's a beauty. So highly recommended from me. Thank you very much for watching. This is Peter from the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Go to the website at orderofgamers.com. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the all notifications button. And of course, check me out on social media where I'm there all the time talking about games. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.